And the hits just keep on coming. First, Sam Pittman at Arkansas, then Billy Napier at Florida. And Sunday, in a move that shocked some people and was fully expected by others, Brian Kelly was fired by LSU after a dismal evening in Tiger Stadium. And Texas A&M took the Tigers to the woodshed. And now another SEC coach has joined the buyout checkout line. So who's going to be next? Is it Hugh Freeze going to be next? He would seem to be the most logical, likely candidate. He may have forestalled his departure a week by Auburn going to Fayetteville and beating Arkansas and probably putting a nail in Bobby Petrino's attempt to get the Auburn full-time job. The old habits die hard. The Arkansas full-time job. Bobby swung and missed at Auburn a couple of times, and this wouldn't be the first time that Auburn prevented him from getting a head coaching job. This time, though, by beating him in Fayetteville in the rain. It's that time of year. It's that season. Some teams competing for championships. Other teams competing for coaches who they believe will take them to a championship. And so they will throw lots and lots of money around to fire one guy and hire the next. Where will the carousel stop? Not anytime soon, that's for sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Skarbinski. This is ScarboKnows. I am Scarbo. Glad to be with you on an inclement Monday morning here in the Birmingham area. A little bit of rain, a little bit of wind, a little bit of chill in the air. It definitely feels like football now. It definitely feels like firing season as well. I want to say thank you to Brendan Martin, our executive producer. Thank you to all of you for joining us. And if you are watching at some point, anytime on YouTube, we encourage you to subscribe to the channel. That's Kevin Skarbinski _ScarboKnows on YouTube. And a special shout out to our sponsor, Money Management Services. They are Birmingham's financial services firm. You need help with tax advice. You are looking toward retirement and you need some planning help there. The Rice family is who you need to call. Scan the QR code, look them up. They're good friends of mine. They will take great care of you. We'll hear from them later on in the show. All right, so let's get to it. The bombshell news of the weekend in SEC football, of course, was LSU firing Brian Kelly. And you know, the people who make these decisions, and at LSU, apparently, those people climb the ladder of importance up to and including the governor of the state. And he was involved in these discussions, according to a number of reports. When you see the sight that we saw at the end of the LSU Texas A&M game, the stands virtually empty of LSU fans, except for those hardy few who stuck around to chant "Fire Kelly" as Brian Kelly left the field after that beatdown. But when you see the visual, you see a virtually empty stadium, except for the Texas A&M fans, the Texas A&M band. You see them dancing and chanting and shouting and celebrating as if they had just taken Baton Rouge in a military maneuver. That stings. That hurts. That hits decision makers where they live because their football program, their university was embarrassed on national television. And that does not last. Cannot last. They cannot accept it. They cannot swallow it. And so despite however many games Brian Kelly has won, we'll look at his record in a moment, that's the end of the road. When you hit bottom that way, and that was bottom for LSU, that scene, that embarrassment, and thus they spent all day Sunday discussing how to move on from Brian Kelly, and they officially pulled the trigger early yesterday evening. And so they will pay him a large amount of money to go away. And now that is one more opening for coaches like Lane Kiffin to consider going forward. Let's look, first of all, let's look at Kelly's record in Baton Rouge. Different from a lot of coaches that have been dismissed. His overall record, not bad in his 3.5 years. He started in 2022, 34-14 overall. SEC record, good but not great at 19-10. But the numbers that will get you fired against ranked teams, he was 5-11. That's hard to believe. His first year, he was 2-2 against ranked teams. And in the last 3 seasons, each year, he's been 1-3 against ranked opponents. That is not up to the LSU standard established by Nick Saban, of course, and continued to some degree, to a lesser degree, certainly by Les Miles and then Ed Orgeron, although each of those guys won a national championship. And Brian Kelly, the final number, 0-0 in the college football playoff because he never got LSU there. That was the expectation when they hired him, when they gave him a huge contract, when they brought him in from Notre Dame, and it seemed like a coup at the time to some people. But very quickly, Brian Kelly showed he just didn't fit. The fake Cajun accent, the what was it? What was it? What was that? I don't know what's going on there. I don't even want to comment on that. The fake Cajun accent, was it the TikTok video with a recruit where he did the Batman move? Brian Kelly just seemed awkward and uncomfortable and ill-fitting in Baton Rouge. Now, if you win enough games, I don't care what part of the country you're from. I don't care if you've ever set foot in that state or that city where your new job is located. You win enough games and none of that matters. Nick Saban was from West Virginia. He was coming from Michigan State when he arrived in Baton Rouge, but he made it home. And really, the only answer for LSU is to throw, I don't know what, $20 million a year at Nick Saban and say, look, give us 4 years, because that's how long it's taken each of the last 3 LSU coaches before Brian Kelly to win a national championship. Give us 4 years, get us a natty, and then ride off into the sunset. Because Nick Saban has never lost his affinity for the Baton Rouge area, the people there, the people at LSU. He built that place. He made that place relevant in a way it hadn't been in a long, long time. And he still has a soft spot in his heart for LSU. I can tell you that. So I don't know that he would do it. I don't think he would do it. He declined again to put his name or even fuel speculation over the weekend on game day. He basically said, don't come to me with that. Don't come to me with numbers and suggestions and job offers. He wants to stay retired, although he's not really retired. He's just retired from coaching. So we'll see how that goes. But Brian Kelly, if you take an ill-fitting situation between a head coach and the culture of a program, and then you don't win the way that program expects to win, the way it has won, and you arrive at the place they arrived at Sunday night, with Kelly hitting the road and LSU now bringing in an interim coach or elevating an interim coach. It'll be Frank Wilson, who has a long history with that program. Interestingly, of course, LSU has a bye week. These things seem to happen at the beginning of bye weeks. And then their next game, of course, is against Alabama in Tuscaloosa. And Alabama escaped a serious trap game at South Carolina and played like a championship team because they didn't play like a championship team. And does that sound like a contradiction? Well, for the first 3+ quarters, Alabama was in deep, deep water. When the students start amassing to storm the field and Sandstorm is banging in your head and that mad rooster crowing won't go away, and you're pushing a big rock up a steep hill and you're down 8 points in the fourth quarter, and then Alabama found something within itself and played like a championship team. Ty Simpson showed what he's made of. Jeremy Bernard, one of the best players in the country, who's not getting the recognition as one of the best players in the country. He stepped up. Deontay Lawson strips the ball from Lenoris Sellers. to create the turnover that puts Alabama in position to go in and score the winning touchdown. The play calling of Ryan Grubb, the guts, the sheer audacity of some of his play calls. But that comes from trust in your quarterback, trust in Jeremy Bernard, trust in your offensive line, trust in your playmakers. And there seems to be a really solid circle of trust on that team right now, from Kalen DeBoer to his assistants, from the assistants to the players and back. They believe in each other. And that belief can go a long way. Alabama's not a great team yet, but they're headed in that direction. And they found greatness at the end of that South Carolina game. So now they are on a roll toward the playoff. Of course, LSU would like nothing better than to knock them off that path with an interim coach. So this can go one of two ways. The Tigers can either rally and give Alabama everything it wants in Bryant-Denny Stadium in 2 weeks, or they can splinter. They can start thinking about their next destinations, whether they're going to move on to the NFL, whether they're going to enter the transfer portal. They can opt out, if not physically, mentally, and emotionally. There's really no way to know how this is going to turn out. But LSU, one of the massive disappointments of this college football season. And so the buyout bonanza has just ratcheted up even higher. More money added to the pile. These are the largest buyouts in college football history, not all of them this year. Jimbo Fisher, of course, at Texas A&M, north of $76 million. Brian Kelly checks in now at number 2 at about $54 million that LSU will owe him. They are reportedly negotiating the buyout. I don't know what there is to negotiate. It's a contract. So we'll see how that works out. But at least LSU was smart enough, unlike Florida with Billy Napier, who's number 5 on this list, to put a mitigation clause into Brian Kelly's contract. So if he gets another job and he is required to seek another job, a comparable job, and he will get hired again when he decides he wants to coach again. And so whatever he makes of that new job will be subtracted from his buyout and will reduce that number perhaps significantly. Then, of course, James Franklin, who was let go earlier by Penn State this season, he's owed about $49 million. Gus Malzahn, people in this state still shudder that Auburn had to pay him $21.4 million to go away. That was the brainchild of the worst president in Auburn University history, Stephen Leith. One of the biggest mistakes Auburn made. You think Brian Harsin was a bad hire? That's nothing compared to Stephen Leith, because they got to Brian Harsin because of Stephen Leith hiring Alan Green as athletics director. So the money keeps flowing. So this is why there is no sympathy for any athletic director. We've heard it from Greg Byrne at Alabama earlier this season, who's asking his boosters, his supporters to contribute here, contribute there, to help build up their NIL war chest. And how can you have any sympathy for these people? And what do the first and second names on this list have in common? Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M and Brian Kelly at LSU were both hired by the same athletic director, Scott Woodward. When does someone hold Scott Woodward accountable for these ridiculously overpriced contracts to which he signed Jimbo Fisher and Brian Kelly with these massive buyouts? And again, you talk about fiscal irresponsibility. There's a lot of that going around in this country and has been for some time. But nowhere, I would argue, perhaps with the exception of the federal government, does it occur more egregiously than in college athletics, and particularly in college football. We're rewarding failure with generational wealth. That is wrong as wrong can get. And yet it continues. And yet someone will throw this kind of contract at Lane Kiffin. We already know what Gatorade Media has reported about the amount that Florida has put on the table to lure Lane Kiffin to Gainesville. Will LSU get in the Lane Kiffin sweepstakes? Will Lane Kiffin go anywhere? Someone today suggested, hey, maybe he's thinking about the NFL and the Miami Dolphins. Who knows? But LSU, but Ole Miss, obviously, after that big win at Oklahoma, they're probably headed toward the playoff. So if you're Florida, and you're definitely interested, if you're LSU and you may be interested, if you're the Miami Dolphins, whoever may be interested in hiring Lane Kiffin away from Ole Miss, you're going to have some patience. You're going to have the kind of patience that Alabama started out with in its search for Nick Saban. And then some powerful people got nervous because Nick Saban's people made it clear to Alabama he's interested in the job, despite anything he said publicly when he was with the Dolphins, but he wasn't going to leave the Dolphins until their season ended in January. And at some point, some powerful Alabama people got nervous, and thus the off-ramp toward Rich Rodriguez. And when that hit a dead end, and I reported this at the time, the very day, it was a Friday, I remember it well, that Rich Rodriguez told Alabama after his agent had indicated the night before that they had an agreement in principle, and Rich Rodriguez said, no, I'm not coming. There were back channel communications between the Nick Saban camp and the Alabama camp in which Nick Saban basically told them, you wouldn't be in this mess if you'd listened to me in the first place. I want the job, but you have to wait. And Mal Moore finally prevailed upon the other decision makers at Alabama and said, okay, we're going to wait. And wait they did, and they got their man. So patience is not a characteristic that runs in deep supply among these kind of heavy hitters. So we'll see if they have it at Florida. We'll see if they have it at LSU. And whoever else might put their name in the Lane Kiffin sweepstakes. So having ushered Brian Kelly out of the picture, who's next? Because you don't think this is going to stop here, do you? You don't think this coaching carousel has stopped spinning in terms of jobs opening, do you? You shouldn't, because it's not over. And of course, the most likely candidate to go next is Hugh Freeze. I have to put a question mark by Hugh's next because we're not certain just yet, because it seems that Auburn is not certain just yet. And don't you love this photo? There, a smiling Hugh Freeze, looking much healthier and fitter and thinner than he does now, standing next to a smiling John Cohen, the athletic director at Auburn, as they both hold up the Freeze #1 Auburn football jersey. And the day that Auburn introduced Freeze as its next head coach, everybody was all smiles that day. The smiles much fewer and farther between today. Now, Auburn apparently is still trying to decide what it wants to do. And Hugh Freeze threw a wrench in the works for the majority of the fan base. We've talked about this before. I am fully convinced that the majority of the Auburn fan base is ready to move on from Hugh Freeze. He gave them pause, though, on Saturday because the Tigers went to Fayetteville. They met the school that usually helps usher Auburn coaches out the door, Arkansas. The coach, Bobby Petrino, with no love lost for Auburn, who's been embarrassed twice. We detailed this in our last episode. Been embarrassed twice by Auburn in his attempt to get the Auburn job. He would have liked nothing better than to knock off Auburn, maybe not push Hugh Freeze out the door, but solidify his argument to become the permanent Arkansas coach and take that interim tag off of his name. So it may have been turnabout fair play this time with Auburn beating Arkansas. I'm not sure how Arkansas can elevate Petrino and keep Petrino in that position. Well, they can. Crazier things have happened. Them bringing him back at all it may be even crazier, but it's going to be more difficult now for them after he lost to one of the other teams in the SEC at the time that was winless in the conference. So we have learned that Auburn is not the worst team in the SEC. That's progress of a sort, I suppose. You beat another bad team, another team that hadn't won a conference game. So that's a positive. But let's look at some more of the details from Auburn 33 Arkansas 24, and why I would say don't go hog wild over this one. Yes, enjoy it, celebrate it, be happy that you won a game in the month of October. Be happy that you didn't go 0-5 in the conference. That's a good thing. And there were a lot of good things on the Auburn side. Once again, the defense. Holding Arkansas to, well, the Arkansas offense didn't score 24 points. The Arkansas team did, but 7 of those were a pick six thrown by Jackson Arnold, which may have ended Jackson Arnold's stay as the Auburn starting quarterback. We'll get into that more in a second. But the defense was very, very good. How about creating 4 takeaways in the fourth quarter? When you're losing going into the fourth quarter, and Auburn took the ball away from Taylon Green, who was awful in his decision-making and his execution. 4 takeaways. Outstanding. Jeremiah Cobb, the wildly underused tailback one at Auburn. He ran for 153. Hugh Freeze finally decided, more so than he had since the very first game of the year, to lean on the running game, and more than he had all year in any game, to lean on his best running back. And Jeremiah Cobb delivered with 153 yards. And then Ashton Daniels, the Stanford transfer at quarterback. What is he, an 8th-year senior? He's seen a lot of college football. He's played a lot of college football. He was not overwhelmed in the moment, at least when he entered the game late in the second quarter, as we said, after Jackson Arnold threw a horrible pick six. And all of a sudden, Arkansas is up 21-10. And it looks like this might be the end for Hugh Freeze. And Hugh Freeze wisely, perhaps later than he should have, made a quarterback change. And Ashton Daniels finished out, mopped up the end of the second quarter, but then took the Tigers home in the second half. Now, he didn't do great things. They didn't ask him to do much in the passing game, but he has the ability to run the ball as Jackson Arnold does, and he was effective there. And he just kind of managed the operation. And everyone expects now that he will be the starting quarterback Saturday night when Kentucky rolls into Jordan-Hare Stadium. Another team without a conference win that Auburn gets to take advantage of. All right, that's the good from that game. The bad, and you do have to look at the details, against one of the worst defenses in the country, Auburn scored 1 offensive touchdown. 1. And that was on its first possession, as the script worked to perfection for Hugh Freeze, as it has before, as it did, for example, at Georgia. And then Auburn's offense did not get in the end zone the rest of the afternoon. That is not good. That is not progress. That is spinning your wheels. And I know it was a wet track. I know it rained during the game. And yet, for some reason, despite the conditions, Hugh Freeze is running speed sweeps in which Eric Singleton kept slipping and losing his footing. They continued to try that until they got smart and just started to run the ball straight ahead with Jeremiah Cobb. But 1 offensive touchdown is not going to cut it against anyone, let alone a defense as bad as Arkansas. And then Jackson Arnold, as we mentioned, you have to feel for him as a person, but it's just not there. It's just not working. They could have seen this earlier. They should have seen it earlier. But that pick six, and I don't care if it was an RPO. Don't try to defend Hugh Freeze and say Jackson Arnold made a bad decision on an RPO after Auburn had put together a drive in which every single snap was a running play. They get down close to the goal line, and he throws a pick six, and you say, well, he should have known better than to throw it. No, Hugh Freeze should have known better than to call it. It's the same movie we watched with Peyton Thorne. If you can't trust your quarterback to make the right decision on an RPO, don't call an RPO. Call a running play. Take the decision-making out of his hands. Put it in your hands. You're the head coach. You're the play caller. You're the offensive. I can't even say the word guru or genius because it certainly doesn't apply to Hugh Freeze. If it ever did, it certainly doesn't now. But that's on Hugh Freeze. That's the downside of what happened Saturday in Fayetteville. And then we cannot discuss this game without feeling really, really good for Alex McPherson. After going 1 for 4 the week before against Missouri, And Hugh Freeze said this after the game. And this makes me feel better about Hugh Freeze just as a human being. After the game, Hugh Freeze said that on Monday morning after the Missouri game, which was Auburn's fourth straight SEC loss, that Alex McPherson went to the head coach's office and apologized for losing the game. He didn't lose the game himself. No one player loses a game. But that tells you something about who Alex McPherson is as a person, that he took that responsibility. He didn't run from it. And the best part of this story is what Alex McPherson has overcome. Not only that he bounced back from 1 for 4 to make 6 of his 6 field goal attempts to give Auburn that win against Arkansas, but that he's come back from ulcerative colitis. He no longer has a colon. He dropped down after not missing a single kick 2 years ago as a freshman. And, of course, the McPherson kicking family is well known. His brother is in the NFL, had a great career at Florida. After not missing a kick as a freshman, he got sick. They didn't know what it was at first. He dropped down to 115 pounds. He was the definition of skin and bones. They had to remove his colon. It was a long uphill battle back for Alex McPherson to even put on a football uniform again, to even think about kicking again. So for him to go from the lowest low physically to making 6 out of 6 field goals in a game and tying the Auburn school record, for all the bad things that have happened at Auburn this year, to Auburn this year, this doesn't erase that, but it does put a lot of smiles on a lot of faces. And so kudos, Alex McPherson. You have earned the undying respect of the Auburn family and a lot of people who just watch Auburn play football like me. All right. So where is this going? Again, a stay of execution, if you like, for Hugh Freeze for 1 week. If he loses to Kentucky, which hasn't won an SEC game in a long time, does that mean that could be the end? Because then goes a trip to Vanderbilt. It's starting to feel like Auburn is going to let him coach out the season, though, and see where this goes. And some very interesting comments after the game by Auburn Athletics Director John Cohen. Let's look at the things that he said to Brandon Marcello from CBS Sports, used to be a colleague of mine at AL.com. Brandon's one of the best in the business. He knows his stuff. He's well connected, well respected. And he was at the game in Fayetteville on Saturday, and he talked to John Cohen. And I found John Cohen's quotes in Brandon's story very, very interesting and perhaps telling. Brendan, let's look at those John Cohen quotes from after the Auburn-Arkansas game on Saturday. We've got to find a way to get better, and we've had some struggles in the second half offensively. Our defense allowed us to have a successful second half. We've just got to keep progressing. Let's count the number of times he says, got to keep getting better. And then I highlighted this. Every single game we have played has been winnable. Every single game we've played. Just need to keep getting better. Now, let's read in between the lines, in between the words, maybe in between the letters. What does this mean? John Cohen has not given Hugh Freeze a vote of confidence. Hugh Freeze last week at his weekly press conference, when he was asked about that, said he would welcome it, said it would be great. It would be a breath of fresh air. It would make everyone feel better. I'm not sure Hugh Freeze understands what usually happens after a coach gets a vote of confidence. It's usually not good for the coach's future in that job. But John Cohen has not delivered that vote of confidence, and this sounds like anything but. And to me, when your boss, the AD, says every single game we've played has been winnable, every single game we've played, that tells me that you didn't do what you could have, should have done as a head coach. If you could have won those games, but you didn't win those games, and you're in your third year on the job, that's not a positive. That's a negative. That means you put your team in position to win, but you couldn't figure out how to win. And Hugh Freeze has said it multiple times this year. They keep finding ways to lose. Well, if you keep finding ways to lose games that you could win, what is your argument for continuing to bang your head against that wall. Yes, the Arkansas win was necessary. We don't know if Auburn would have fired Hugh yesterday had Auburn dropped that game. If the 21-10 halftime lead that Arkansas had would have continued. If Taylor Green hadn't imploded in the second half. If Auburn's defense hadn't gone nuts in the fourth quarter and turned Arkansas over 4 times. If Alex McPherson hadn't been spot on and made all 6 of his field goal attempts. If Auburn had walked out of there with a loss, I can't tell you that Hugh would or wouldn't be the Auburn coach today. But they did win. He is the coach today. He will be the coach for at least one more game. And now I'm starting, to suspect he's going to be the coach through the end of the season. Because they should beat Kentucky. They shouldn't beat Vanderbilt on the road. And then they should beat, who's their FCS punching bag? Mercer, I believe. And then, how about Hugh coaching for his job in the Iron Bowl in Jordan-Hare Stadium against an Alabama team headed to the SEC championship game, potentially the playoff, likely. And Hugh has a chance to do the funniest thing. Save his job and derail Alabama. It could come down to that. And in this state, if you know the history of that rivalry, you almost expect it to come down to that. Because drama is the Iron Bowl's middle name. And we'll see if that unfolds that way. But so much more to come. So many more. If you don't put notifications on your phone, you're missing out because you never know what's going to happen from day to day with the SEC this year, whether it's on the officiating front, the coaching front, or just the winning and losing front. Much, much more to come. This has been a fantastic season. Fantastic season to launch a podcast, I'll say that. So thank you to all of you who've been watching and listening. And again, if you do check us out on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that. It's Kevin Skarbinski, ScarboKnows. I'm Scarbo, known as Kevin. And that's going to do it for me today. Thank you to Brendan Martin, the executive producer on the Sidelines.live network. Check out all the great shows on the network. And especially check out our sponsor, Money Management Services. You'll be glad you did. You'll hear from them next. I'm Kevin. Have a great day. See ya.
Since 1992, Money Management Services in Birmingham has provided individuals and business owners with trusted, fee-only financial advice. We're more than advisors, we're your financial family. From retirement planning to tax strategies and estate planning, our team builds personalized wealth management plans tailored to your life. At Money Management Services, we treat you like family, because when you walk through our doors, you become part of ours.